Alhamdulillah. Uh, let me let me go ahead and back up just a little bit because I've been talking more and more about neoliberalism, and a lot of people have no idea what that means. Okay, so it's talking about economic liberalism. Okay, not liberals or social liberals. Okay, it's talking about economic liberalism, like the social liberal, which is most Democrats. They liberal, it means freedom. Okay, so the Democrats are different from Republicans in what they believe about the freedom of a woman to choose what she does with her body. Okay, and if she decides she needs or wants to have an abortion, she's free to do that. Okay, that's social liberalism. The freedom of the people to make their choices. Economic liberalism is a whole different matter. Okay, and like I was talking about earlier, it doesn't mean your freedom or my freedom. It means the opposite of that. Okay, but it means free market. Okay, and I don't mean free market like you and I are free to go out and start a business. No, it means that the wealthy and the corporations who already exist are free to do whatever the hell they want. Okay, and so because that philosophy and approach, which at the time was called laissez-faire, under Hoover, Wilson, etc., in the 1910s and 20s, led to the Great Depression, led to the just utter collapse of the system. And so FDR had put certain things in place. Okay, they had put job guarantees for people. They had put in regulations on banking and investing. Later, they started the EPA, environmental protection, trying to make businesses and corporations do things with environmental responsibility. Okay, and that held up until you get into the 70s, and that was the beginning of neoliberalism, which meant, okay, an effort to get rid of these regulations and controls. Hang on a second, I'm gonna. Sorry, my AC had kicked on and I wanted to get rid of that noise. Uh, so neoliberalism then in the 70s and really kicked in with Reagan in the 80s and then Bill Clinton, and that's the period in the 90s when I'm saying that the Democratic Party basically became Republican. Um, so neoliberalism then was a fight back against regulation, oversight, any kind of control over businesses and corporations. Okay, and there were a few organizations that all began around the same time. Okay, and this is from the early 70s up into the early 80s. But you found like AEI, American Enterprise Institute, which I believe is Koch funded. Okay, the Koch brothers. Heritage Foundation was one of the first and began in the early 70s. American Legislative Exchange Council began in the late 70s. And if you look at their agenda, then you'll see why Republicans have been doing what they've been doing. Okay, it was these organizations that wrote up and propagated, what they wanted to do, and that included, fair trade like NAFTA, or free trade. Sorry, it's not fair trade, it's free trade, which is garbage. The prison privatizing, charter schools, okay, which is basically handing public schools over to private ownership, but still being paid for by the taxpayer. Okay, that's just like trademark neoliberalism, and that came out of the Heritage Foundation and ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. Okay, and you can look up online, just go on and Google, and by now you'll find thousands of articles, okay, about what they've been doing and what they do. And this one I just found, even though it's over 2 years old. Okay, Trump's agenda. Okay, the Heritage Foundation was, of course, approved, and they were among his primary advisors. And so these atrocious policies are pretty much standard for the Republican Party. And that's why people have been saying, look, Trump is a horrible person, but he's really not doing anything out of line with what Republicans and even Democrats have been doing. He's just very ugly about it. So there was another article, and this one talks about ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. And you should go to the ALEC Exposed website. I think they were the first organization that got their hands on a leak of official ALEC documents. And that was like the first time, and this was not even 10 years ago, this was like the first time that people even really knew of the existence of ALEC, and ALEC had formed in the mid-70s. Okay, so by that time they had been around almost 40 years before anybody even found out about them. But, I mean, the way they operate, basically, they have their agenda. The Republican politician will agree, that, and they'll make it very vocal, but they use, coded language like charter schools, which means setting up private profits off of public schools, and they'll call it school choice, free choice in education, and it's garbage, okay? But that Republican running for office, then they agree to it, and then these millionaires, billionaires, corporations, etc., will fund their campaign to get them into office, okay? And if they don't do what they've been told to do, they won't get funding, but usually they're really rotten people who are totally immoral, and they just go along with it, even though it's extremely destructive, to the people, to the planet, and everything. I think I hear my dog barking. I'm going to stop this again. I'll be right back. Sorry. So I'm going to come back. Yeah, my dog was barking at a beetle or something. So I'm going to have to try to splice this together with the previous session. So you can look these organizations up, and once you see their agenda and how they operate, then you'll fully understand that that's what's being done. It's every day. Started out at federal level, has taken over so many of the states. I mean, basically you can call them ALEC states, and so many people do. Texas is one, Arizona a big one, Florida. Most of these really solid red states, I mean, you can look up their politicians and you'll find the connections to ALEC, Heritage, and you'll find their funding, their corporate funding, okay? It's a shame that more people don't know about that. But anyway, so because capitalism, it demands profit even when it's basically run up against its own limitations. So it creates, criminally, it creates its own opportunities, great big scare quotes, okay, to keep itself alive. You'll see this, okay, huge difference in, say, a publicly funded doctor, for example, okay, they're making, 100 grand a year, 120 grand a year. It's guaranteed income. They're not really in it for profit. But their incentive then is to be good doctors. And so, they want to proactively give you the best treatment they can and cure you if possible. Well, with the doctors and hospitals, etc., being paid by insurance companies, and that means they get paid per visit, okay, it actually is an incentive, and you will find it happening. They really don't want you cured, okay? They will treat you, okay, and set you up for a year or 2 years or 3 years or 10 years of treatment, okay? Which is, of course, it's criminal, but it's not illegal, all right? That's the difference between morality and legality, okay? What they do is perfectly legal, highly immoral. And that's the kind of corruption that capitalism creates, okay? The climate denial connected to the energy industries, okay? We know we're destroying the planet. They want to always pretend that they're doing this and doing that, trying to make things better. And, you'll find with automakers going back and forth and advertising, well, we'll make our cars a little more fuel efficient, and we're really maxing out the technology. We're really charging forward. And it's garbage. They could, completely revolutionize, but that's not where the profit is. The profit is in extending the burning of fossil fuels until there are none left, and then they'll flip over to, if we're not all dead by then. Okay, I've stated clearly, and this is a fact, okay, that capitalists are parasites. Okay, parasites. It means they live on the system. They do not actually do anything. Okay, just like a bloodsucker, just like, a leech. You go swimming in the river and you come out with a leech and you don't see it and it's just sucking your blood. Okay, it doesn't provide a benefit, it just feeds on you, okay? And capitalism is the same way. If you, and I'm going to get more into this later, but I'm going to just try to show some examples, okay? Think about banking. What does a bank do? Well, as just working class, we use it to deposit our money, deposit our paychecks, hang on to our cash, okay? But their real business is getting you in there for a loan, okay? All right. Is that necessary? No, it's not, okay? They are an unnecessary middleman, all right? The funds that they're going to loan you are not their funds, actually. Those funds are created by the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury, okay? And literally created out of thin air, okay? You could just as easily, and so many people talk about this, have your local post office serve as your bank. As a federal organization, the funding would come directly from the government without the bank acting as a middleman. Okay, you would lose nothing. You would gain, cutting out that parasitic middleman that literally just doesn't do anything, okay? The insurance industry, it's the same thing. Understand the model, okay? What I need is I need health care, okay? And you got two ways of going about it. You can have a publicly funded healthcare system, which is most of the civilized world has. It's much cheaper. It's much better for us. It's guaranteed. Okay, and it's cheaper. Okay. Or you can have this insurance industry scam. It's a scam. Okay. They're taking money from the people the same way that taxes could be taken from the people to pay for a government, health care program. But they're yanking their percentage out of it, okay? But they are not incentivized to give you the best health care, okay? And if you look into it, and I think now millions and millions of people have seen it, they try to screw you every step of the way, okay? That's their profit incentive, to screw you, to endanger your health, endanger your life even, okay? To make you fight to get proper health care, and so much of the time you lose anyway, okay? All right, landlords. Okay, this goes back to what I was talking about with the Enclosure Acts, the Great Theft, when the common lands, the public lands of the people, where people lived freely, had their own little communities, took care of their own food, built their own places to live, didn't pay rent to anybody, okay? But when that was taken away from the people, then the people had to start paying rent. Well, it created this massive rent industry, okay? What does the renter provide the landlord? Nothing, okay? Literally nothing, okay? The money even that they use typically to buy properties, it's usually not even their money, okay? They'll gather a few people around to come up with 10%, and then go get a massive loan for 10, 20 times that amount, and that's what they use to buy properties with, all right? And from then on, then it's just extracting their profits from your monthly, salary, your monthly income. And it keeps poor people poor. It keeps the middle class delayed in home ownership, okay? It is absolutely useless, harmful to the people, and beneficial to a tiny, tiny handful of wealthy landlords, okay? It's parasitism, okay? There's no reason for it. It can be done other ways, and we would be the ones benefiting, okay? This is just how capitalism operates. Think about Uber, okay? I know people use Uber and Lyft like every day now. They provide nothing. Nothing, okay? Before Uber, every place had taxi service, all right? Uber, all they did is they built an app and started marketing it and getting on everybody's phone and cutting the price a little cheaper than taxis, and that's how they have knocked the taxi cab business out, where people have made their living in that, their families living in that for 100 years, okay? The old cab driver used to make a living. Go talk to Uber and Lyft drivers now and see how much of a living they're actually making. They're all complaining. Overworked, fully responsible. They're honestly independent business owners. They don't get treated like it. They're basically owned by Uber without Uber having any responsibility or liability. Uber is just extracting, the profits basically just for having a goddamn app on everybody's phone. Okay, that is parasitic. Okay, that's a parasite, a middleman that really, there's no reason for them to be there, but they could, so they did. Okay, that's how capitalism now is literally just like eating, eating, the old cab driving business where people actually made a decent living in a profession that a lot of cab drivers actually enjoyed. Okay, you won't find that many Uber or Lyft drivers enjoying their lives. Okay, especially with the crappy wages and being fully responsible for their vehicle payments, vehicle maintenance, and it it keeps honestly like your 24 hours occupied because you don't always get business. You get business in the early morning hours, a little at lunch, in the evening, and then some late at night. I mean, and in between, a lot of times you're just sitting. Okay, it's miserable, guys. And we can do so much better. Okay, all the solutions are already out there. Capitalism blocks them. Okay, they don't want our lives better at all. They don't even want to save the planet. Okay, for their profits, they're happy to destroy everything. It's happening right now. Okay, all right. I think I'm done for tonight, and I'll come back with some more tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.